everybody's getting a mic, is that correct?
Yep.
I don't need one.
And we'll just
Okay, I'm not going to set your...
ourselves.
You're not talking, Lori, for sure?
Power first.
The noon one is where you need 3.
I can do the glider and then we can also...
No, it's the afternoon. It's the 15th.
That's where I need 3, okay.
It's
Okay,
the
very
last
good, very good.
flight.
Okay.
That's kind of what Philip and I did yesterday. And Philip was very good about reading through who the sponsors were. She forgot. I did.
Yeah, I think it's like almost at the back. We've got all of them listed.
Our diamond sponsors,
Yeah.
so forth.
Yeah, so
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Salina, Kansas at the 2023 U.S. National Aerobatic Championships. This morning, I'm Keith Doyne. I'm partnered with
Peter Nassar. Good morning.
And this morning we will be having pilots in the Sportsman and primary category doing their free flights. It's flight number 2. And the first pilot should be a Sportsman competitor flying. They just finished flying the low lines, which tells the judges where the box markers are so they can see, and also the bottom of the box. For Sportsman, the bottom of the box is 1,500 feet. The same for primary category.
So our first competitor is Kelly Fawcett. And Kelly Fawcett is flying a Staudacher, which is a experimental built aircraft, very high performance. And Kelly is flying a free program, which is his own compilation of figures for this routine. What Kelly is going to do is fly in on a base coming up on the side, and then Kelly will dive into the box and signal the beginning of the sequence by wagging his wings. Here we see him coming into the box. 1, 2, 3 wags. And his first figure, he's going to pull to vertical. Judges are looking for a perfectly straight line up. And now Kelly's going to push over the top and enter a 1.5 rotation spin. You see Kelly's going to the left, and these engines, the way they rotate, they like to go to the left, as expected. And that's end of figure 2. The next figure is figure 3, which is a half loop up, and Kelly will finish inverted and fly out a line inverted. Trying to maintain constant altitude now. And now a half loop down. And judges are looking for symmetry in all of these maneuvers. And next figure is a 180-degree aerobatic turn.
And Kelly's going to want to drive to the other side of the box again, trying to balance and fly the figures in the boxes to where it's depicted on the diagram for the judges.
And this is a hammerhead maneuver where Kelly came to a complete stop at the top and then rotated on axis and then straight back down again. And next figure is a shark tooth. Kelly's going to pull vertical. And now around to a 45-degree downline, and then with 2/4 rolls end up upright on the 45 downline. Next we have a vertical upline. And followed by a vertical downline. We see him working a little bit further to the right side of the box. This is a Humpty Bump maneuver straight up. Now he'll float it up over the top for a symmetrical half turn and then vertical back down. Now there's a 270-degree aerobatic turn, and Kelly's going to exit the box away from us. And that's the end of Kelly's flight.
And for our viewers, we'd like to note that for constructing a free program, the pilots have their rules and guidelines and limitations listed in the IAC rulebook that they follow in constructing the free program. And as you go up in categories, those restrictions lessen, and there's more maneuvers and more difficulty that people can fill in.
Yeah, for constructing your free, there's basically 3 criteria. One is the number of figures that are allowed in your total sequence. I think for Sportsman it's 15. I'm not positive. It might be 12. The second is you have to incorporate certain different families of maneuvers into your program. And then finally, the difficulty of your program cannot be over, the overall score of difficulty cannot be higher than the known or published program. And that's really to keep these pilots flying within the right level of difficulty for their skill set. So for Sportsman, it is 12 figures.
And you are absolutely correct looking at the rules that the maximum total difficulty is current as the known sequence. Again, you have newer pilots and trying to make sure that they are comfortable in flying those maneuvers that they can create. And it's not uncommon that for sportsmen that they'll fly the known sequence twice, and that is, it becomes their free sequence. They are allowed to do that.
Right. Yeah, in the Sportsman category, they have the option of flying their known twice, or they can do a free. And doing a free is really an advantage for these pilots because it's their own compilation. So you would think that they could fly their own compilation a little bit better. Next up, we have a glider pilot coming in, and
it's a U.S. Air Force Academy cadet flying primary glider.
Yeah, and Keith, who's commenting with me today, is a competitive glider pilot also, so I'm sure he can speak to this routine much better than I can.
Typically for the primary glider, it's going to be, you're going to have loops and turns and rolls and something called a clover leaf, which is a loop, but you put a quarter turn into it, so you come out on a different axis, coming out towards the judges. And it's something called a wing over, which is a climbing, turning maneuver that allows you to climb and change direction.
Right now, you need the order of flight.
And we now have the glider in the box. And as you notice with gliders, they do not have a motor, so it's very quiet. Now he should be drawing a 30-degree down line. For primary Sportsman intermediate gliders, instead of a 45-degree down line, they draw a 30-degree down line. Pulling up, turning as he does, pull through the rest of the looping part of the maneuver. A 270-degree competition turn, which is again a turn with a bank greater than 60 degrees. He'll come all the way around and come across back on the x-axis in front of the judges. The next figure will be a full roll, and if any of the viewers were with us yesterday, with the gliders, it's a slow roll. They just do not have the same performance and roll capability in terms of speed of roll as some of the powered airplanes. Now this is going to be a climbing, turning maneuver where when you get to the top of the maneuver, the wings are going to be vertical and pointing straight down to the ground, and you come back making 180-degree turn, pointing the next direction. And the last maneuver will be a loop. And as if you noticed with the gliders that without the engine, they still have to trade airspeed, the altitude to gain the airspeed. And there's the wing wag, the finish of sequence. But with the gliders, one of the things that the pilots have to do is they're slowly pointing down when they come out of the maneuver, so they trade the altitude to get airspeed for the next maneuver. And it requires a lot of thought in the management of the altitude and energy in order to make sure that you have the airspeed necessary for each of the maneuvers.
Yeah, Keith, it seems like quite the skill set to manage the energy. You know, in the powered flights, we have to manage energy and have enough, but we can always push in a little bit more throttle or power to try and make up for that. But the glider has a set amount of altitude that they have, and that's what they've got to work with, constantly trading their altitude for more energy.
Sorry. Let's try this again. How you doing, Mark Medicola? I told you I'm going to slow this down just a little bit. Next competitor, I'm just going to say his damn name. It's Ryan. He's on a known. He's on a blue
Our next competitor should be a powered pilot. You may have heard the chief judge talking to the rest of the judges out here on the judges line, making sure we're coordinated. And while we have some time, I'd like to point out that this contest would not operate without our sponsors. And we have various levels of sponsorship, and our top sponsors, diamond sponsors, are Extra Aircraft and MX Aircraft. And here at the National Championships, the most popular aircraft is the Extra Aircraft, and in all categories. And followed by, in the higher categories, probably the MX Aircraft is also very popular and gaining popularity with a number of advanced and unlimited pilots.
Sure, the new MX-3 has come into play in the last couple of years. Very high performance aircraft, and competing head and head with the Extra. And I think the Unlimited team has two flying the MXS this year.
And of course, you fly an Extra, Peter, right?
Yeah, I fly an Extra 330 SC. There's more plane than pilot in that airplane right now, but I'm working to catch up with it. But they are absolutely incredibly flying aircraft, plenty of power to be able to complete any maneuver all the way up through Unlimited, and fly very beautifully, both upright and inverted, so a lot of symmetry in the flight, and it can really make a pilot look good. It does a lot of the work for us.
And I think out of the last several world champions, they all flew Extras. So that kind of tells you something about the quality and the ability of the aircraft at the highest level.
Yeah, we do have Rob Howland winning consistently,
and
he flies an MX-3.
So you give the pilot and you give them the right airplane, and they will make it perform amazingly. Well, we have our next pilot in the box. Powered pilot, I believe, flying a decathlon.
Yep, and Ryan's flying the known sequence, same one he flew for his first flight, and this is a loop. And the next maneuver is a hammerhead. He's going to start with a 45-degree line. And then go vertical. Now he's going to pivot to the left and come straight down. Now Ryan has worked pretty much over the top of the judges here. Makes it a little bit hard to judge and score, and you may see him try and work across the box with this. Next maneuver is a sharp tooth. He's going to pull vertical. And now bring it around and finish inverted on a 45-degree down line. And with a 2-point rule. Ryan taking a break in this sequence. He's wagged his wings a few times. Now he's going to exit the box. He's going to reposition. So pilots will take a break for a couple of reasons. One, they don't like their position in the box, and they need to reposition in order to be able to finish their sequence appropriately. Or secondly, they've realized they've flown an incorrect maneuver and are kind of lost in their sequence and just need time to reorient. So these breaks are allowed, and it's an important factor to allow us to get ourselves reorganized, but also for safety. If a pilot's confused or having a difficult time, it's certainly time to take a break.
And sometimes the pilots may be given an optional break depending upon the weather conditions, the winds, and the maneuvers that are being flown. I do want to mention Ryan is one of those college students from the MSU, Metro State University program. We have 3 college teams here, Metro State University, University of North Dakota, and also the Air Force Academy cadets that make up the college program, and they are the future of aerobatics as competitors. So it's great to see them out flying. It's great to have the programs available to them, and they get coaching and have aircraft available to fly and compete in.
We see Ryan wagging his wings, signaling that he's ready to start his sequence again, resume the sequence. He has a full roll. And I suspect, Keith, when he took his break before, it looked like he was just a little slow and was concerned about having enough energy to do a nice roll without losing altitude.
And again, a very smart, safe thing to do. Take a break, which is very few points, and get yourself collected and get reorganized and come back in prepared to finish the sequence.
Ryan just capped off, and now he's going to enter a 1 1/4 revolution spin. And he'll finish towards us. Loop over the top, finish on the vertical down line. Now it's a quarter roll, and even back to our left. This is a half keeping where he does a 5/8 loop up and around. Now he goes upright, 45 down line. Wags his wings, signaling under the feet. Pretty good flight, Keith. He reorganized after that wing wag. Maybe a little tight over the top of the judges, but overall really nice.
Yes, and I'd also like to mention that the Decathlon is one of those entry-level aircraft that you learn to fly the aerobatics, and it's the basic maneuvers. It helps you build all of the base skills that you need. It's not a difficult aircraft to fly. It's not a difficult aircraft to take off or land. So for building overall skill for aerobatics and for moving up to future airplanes, it's a great airplane to start.
Yeah, I agree. It has a few qualities. You know, having the wing on the top, the center of gravity is below, so it has kind of a pendulum effect, so it's a little bit harder to fly symmetrically, but that's great because it teaches you that you have to use your rudder, you have to use all of your control surfaces to really keep this airplane on the appropriate track. And I think if you don't learn those skills at a lower level, if you get into something like an extra, where you really don't have to do that as much. So these are the basics. You get the basics in this kind of aircraft.
But it also, if you don't build those basics properly, when you get into the high performance aircraft, you could have you don't have the solid basics. So when you go fly the higher performance aircraft, you can get sloppy and it doesn't look as good or perform as well as you would like and score as well. So you got to build the basics, and the primary sportsman categories are a great way to do that. And also, the Decathlon's a 2-seat aircraft, so if you want to take somebody for a ride, you can do that too. It's a great aircraft for instruction. A number of schools across the country that teach aerobatics use a Decathlon to start with, again, to build those basic skills and then move up to either a 2-seat extra or a 2-seat Pitts S2B, S2C. While we're waiting for the next competitor, I'd like to mention that our platinum sponsors, Aurora Aero, MT Propeller, Paraphernalia, and Jerry and Peggy Reedinger.
Okay, Keith, and we have Robin Simmons in the box flying a glider.
Alrighty, Robin is flying the loop, coming around. And notice he's drawing a little bit of a down line to gain the speed. Pulling up, this is a lay down Humpty, pulling up, roll a 45, pull around, drawing a 30-degree down line. There we go. And then he's going to do a Cuban, a half Cuban, which is a pull to a 5/8 loop. Draw a 30-degree down line. Half roll to upright. Come out. Next is a quarter, what they call quarter cloverleaf. It's a loop with a quarter turn on the up line and allows you to come out 90 degrees from where you started. We'll do a 90-degree turn, competition turn, back towards the judges. And the last maneuver will be a full roll. Now, Robin is flying in a Fox glider, which is a glider designed for aerobatics, versus what the Air Force Academy flies being the DG, which does gliding and also aerobatics. So it's a little bit of both, whereas the Fox glider has a bit more performance with it. So that was Robin, who is out of Arizona, flying in the Fox glider. And as you may have noticed, I was a little slow in starting to call the maneuvers because I didn't hear him come into the box because he has no motor, and I didn't hear the chief judge yell, "Heads up." So I apologize for missing the first couple of maneuvers, but the first was a 45 up with a 1.5 turn spin.
Okay.
While we're waiting for our next competitor, as I had mentioned, some of our platinum sponsors, MT Propeller, it's a...
Judges, I'm going to say this once and I'm going to try to say it right. Howard, Sportsman, he's on a free, he's on a freaking white form. Sean. Everybody copy?
MT Propeller is a very popular propeller with the aerobatic aircraft, being whether it's pit specials or extras, or maybe found on MX aircraft. Paraphernalia is a parachute maker, very popular with the aerobatic pilots, whether it's a back chute or a seat chute. And Jerry and Peggy Reedinger are very active in the aerobatic community as both judges, competitors, and former board members. And Jerry flies in the advanced category in his extra, and I believe he's going to move up to intermediate in gliders this year too.
And next up we have Sean Higgins in the Sportsman powered category. Sean is flying a free compilation that he's put together himself.
Yeah, Sean's going to be flying a decathlon, and I do believe he flies for the University of North Dakota team.
Yeah, that was a great point about the college teams and also the Air Force teams. This is not an inexpensive sport, and often young folks don't have the opportunity to get this type of experience as they work into their flight careers. So it's absolutely wonderful that we have these collegiate teams and this opportunity.
And the fact that they come to regional contests and to nationals, and there is, I believe, a trophy or an award at the end of the year for the highest scored collegiate team, and individual too. Even though at a contest they're competing with everybody in their category, even some of their classmates they're competing with. However, there is still pride in the award that is given. And I believe Sean is heading towards the box.
And Sean's entering the box, and we've seen his wig-wag signaling the initiation of his sequence. And he's going to start right off with a spin. He's going to pull vertical. You'll see him cap off really close to his stall speed, and then he will stall the aircraft and force it into rotation, which is what we call a spin. This is a 1.5 spin, so he's going to finish out the opposite direction. And end of figure, that was a nice maneuver. Next he has a shark's tooth, which is a pull to the vertical. And he's going to pull over the top here to 45 inverted downline. And the judges here are looking for the same length of line before he did that half roll and the same length after when he finishes. And that's the end of that figure. And now we're into the Humpty Bump, up vertical, around over the top, and a vertical downline. Now Sean has a vertical upline, and then he's going to fly across the box inverted. And he should be looking around to position himself, looking for center box, so that he's going to draw the next figure, which is a vertical downline at the appropriate spot. You can see how he's working the aircraft across the box to get the best position he can. That was nicely done. This figure is similar, except he's going to half loop up, fly across the box, get his positioning, and then he's going to half loop down. And he seems to be taking his time, Keith, and working through this at a really nice pace.
Yes, definitely working on trying to position himself in the box.
And
nicely
he is lagged out. And he had a loop coming up, and it looks like he was potentially a little low or struggling with energy a little bit on that. So now he'll reposition and he'll come in making sure he's in the right spot and with enough energy to do that next maneuver. The Sportsman category is really fun to watch. These are pilots, they've kind of figured out the aerobatics, but this is the first level where they have more maneuvers. They get to fly a free program that they compile themselves. And these are, and I've heard this from a lot of the unlimited guys and top guys, this is the most important group, because if this group has a great experience, they're going to go on to intermediate and on to advanced. So it's really important to support this group in this class.
Definitely, and there's usually a large group of folks that fly Sportsman. If people are wondering about these aircraft, and you notice he was flying inverted for a long period of time, the aircraft have inverted fuel and oiling systems, so the engines keep running when it's upside down or right side up.
Yeah, that's a great point. You don't want to try this in your Cessna. It won't work out very well.
No, you'll have a surprise when the prop stops inverted. There, a couple of competitors, maybe in primary and regional contests, may have non-inverted systems, but most of the aircraft, I would say 95+%, have inverted systems, so the engine will should always be running, whether upright or inverted.
So Sean flew by us. I thought he was going to come in, but I think he recognized that he was just too close to the edge of the box. He was right over the top of us. So I suspect, Keith, he's going to fly out and reposition again and try and get us set up just a little better.
Well, talk a little bit about for the aerobatic box, because some of our viewers may be new to this and may not understand or realize what we have here that the pilots use and the judges use for what we call the aerobatic box.
Sure. So it's more than just a box it's a box in the sky, and we're supposed to stay within this box, but it's not imaginary. There are actually markers on the ground, and it's approximately 3,300 feet square on the ground, which is 1,000 yards. And you need to stay within that box. And then the vertical limits are slightly different for different categories, but the top of the box is around 3,000 feet. And then the floor of the box, as low as you can be, is dependent on your category that you're flying, and that's usually mainly a safety consideration. And for this class, it's 1,500 feet. The intermediate guys, it's 1,200 feet. The advanced, it's around
660, I think.
Yeah, and the unlimited guys go down to around 360 feet, which is really something. But he's wagging back in now. And he should be resuming his program with a loop. Position looks good. He's probably looking to be right in the center of the box. And next is the hammerhead. He's going to pull vertical. And on this hammerhead, he wants to wait till he's just about at a complete stop, and then the airplane needs to turn within one wingspan. Under that figure, and he has a roll to finish his sequence. And that was a really nicely done roll. You could see how he blended his controls. You didn't see the nose dish down or come up at all. Very nice.
Mm-hmm. And just piggyback on what you were saying about the aerobatic box, there are markers on the ground, the corners, the sides, and the center, and the pilots use those to help them figure out where in the box that they are, and also to make sure that for presentation scores, that if they have the figures on the right side of the box, they're in the right side of the box, and what is the wind doing pushing them around. So those markers on the ground make it very nice that they can see. And when you're doing down maneuvers or drawing a down line or coming out of a loop or coming out of a maneuver, you can see those markers and get an idea of positioning of where you are. And in some cases, if you're not happy with it, you can adjust or take a break, as some people do, come back around, set yourself up, and fly, because we are told what the winds are. The competitors are given an idea what the winds are when you're on the ground. However, as you go through the category and as the day goes on, the winds can change, and all of a sudden, what you thought was going to push you from west to east is no longer doing that, and you have to rethink how you want to adjust starting a maneuver or starting your sequence to account for that. So there's a lot going on for the pilots just besides flying the aerobatic maneuvers.
Sure, that's a great point. So you have to know where the markers are, and as you said, you see them best when you're going straight down. A lot of times on the vertical upline, you can't see them. When you're straight and level, your wings are in the way. If you're in an extra, you can't see them. But that's when you get the look. And one of the grading criteria at the end of the sequence is they get a score for each one of these figures, but then they get an overall presentation score, and that's largely based on where they keep that aircraft in the aerobatic box. And the quick way to lose a couple points is to be right over the judges where they can't see you. If they feel they can't judge that maneuver because you're on that edge, it's an automatic 2-point deduction on that figure. So it's really important to stay there.
Or in some cases that can happen with gliders, and I was talking to one of the glider pilots at a previous contest. He released too early and didn't get over to the box and flew his maneuvers farther away, and the presentation score suffered.
Sportsman, free on a white form. White form. Glider, sorry, glider.
Keith, we have a glider up, should be on your schedule there.
Yep.
This should be the first time we have the glider free.
And I believe this is one of the Air Force Academy cadets flying, as I'm looking at the form. And they're flying a DG 1001 glider. And as white gliders go, they're a little difficult to find in the sky sometimes.
Once you see them, you can't look away because you sure can't hear them and look for them.
Okay, he looks like he just got off. Oh, no, he's still on tow.
So talk about how these guys get towed off and let off the hook.
Well, typically in the U.S., there is a tow plane with a 200-foot rope and another attached piece of rope that is what they call a brake, so that there's a device in the glider which you have a metal ring that attaches to the glider and it's attached to the airplane, and an airplane pulls you up to altitude, and when you get to altitude you pull the release mechanism, and now you're off tow, and now you're soaring, so to speak. And if you're just into soaring, then you're looking for thermals and air rising. If you're flying glider aerobatics, then you're looking for the box and setting yourself up.
About what altitude are they releasing for this contest?
They're usually up around 4,000, 4,500 feet. They need the little extra altitude simply because of they're exchanging that altitude for airspeed as they work their way through the sequence. And so to make sure that they have a really good chance of staying above the 1,500 foot bottom of the aerobatic box for primary and sportsman, they're usually up around 4,000, I think, is the release, and they'll dive into the box. As you notice, most of the competitors, they like to dive into the box when they do their wing wag. They can see the box, but they're also gaining speed for the first maneuver.
And Keith, we were talking before about how when you see them flying across the box, they look like they're going level, but they're always maybe 5-10 degrees nose down to maintain a good speed?
Yes, and that's, again, if they're level flight, they will lose speed and it'll bleed off because of drag, and they may not have enough speed for the next maneuver. So it's very typical that they're allowed to do it legally by the rules, that if they maintain that 5-degree down line between maneuvers, that's acceptable.
I think we see wing wags there.
Yes, and the pilot is going across the box. And as you notice, gliders are a little slow. First maneuver it should be a split S, which is a half roll, followed by a half loop down. The next maneuver will be a 45 upline. And again, coming out of that split S, they have the speed to draw a nice, it's a 30-degree upline. Apologize for that mistake, but it's a 30-degree upline. There, they pulled up for 30-degree upline, and then they'll cap it off the top and followed it by a 1.5 turn spin. There they go with the spin, and they should come all the way around 1.5 turns. Draw a down line and pull out into a Humpty, which is just a pull to a vertical, half loop over the top, and a vertical down line. And if you notice, the up lines are very short. They just don't have an engine to be able to drive. The down line will be a little bit longer to gain the airspeed for the next maneuver, which is going to be a half Cuban. It in effect is a 5/8 loop, and just as they get to the 5/8 mark, they'll draw a 30-degree down line, do the half roll, and then come out with energy, and it's a 30-degree up line, push over to the vertical down, pull out horizontal, followed by a 180-degree competition turn. They're turning away from the judges to get back more towards the center of the box. And the last maneuver will be a full slow roll. And again, they're working the controls to try to stay level in flight as they go through the full roll. And they're working the controls in that glider to try to get through it, because it doesn't have a symmetrical airfoil, so it doesn't fly the same right side up as upside down. So when you're inverted, there's more of a push to try to get and maintain the up nose. So when you do the second half of the roll, it's not going to dish out to the left or to the right. Very well done by the Air Force Academy cadets, and most of the cadets who fly with the glider program, the glider aerobatics, and when they graduate, they'll be getting pilot training assignments within the Air Force. So this is a great way for them to get experience and training to build the skills that's going to allow them to be very, very, very good Air Force pilots.
And if you're just joining us today, you're viewing the live feed from the U.S. National Aerobatic Championships. We're in Salina, Kansas. Working with me on commentary, it's Keith Dwayne. On our audio-visual is Forrest Fox, and next to me is Lori Penner, making this all possible. Lots of volunteers here supporting us today. What's our volunteer staff? We've got to have a lot, 50, maybe 100, but everybody does this for free, here to support, at least 50 here to support the great contest. And today we have Sportsman Power Class, and we also have Glider, Primary, and Sportsman. A lot of great action today. Later on this afternoon, we're going to have the intermediate class flying. Before the intermediate class, we're going to be treated to the unlimited class, which is the highest class of aerobatic performance we're going to see, and that's going to be around 11 o'clock today.
And we should also mention to our viewers that this year it's a team selection year for the unlimited pilots to go to the World Aerobatic Championships next year. I'm not sure where they're being held, but They're supposedly going to be next summer. Right now on the judges line, we have 5 judges, all volunteers, and each of the judges have an assistant that has the sequence and is calling it out, and there's an additional assistant, a recorder, who's recording comments and scores as the judges can focus on the flight going up. So you may hear comments about that, but typically you have that, and then you have the chief judge, which is running the whole show, and they have assistants, and you have 2 starters over on the other side of the airport getting the pilots ready and going. And I believe there's a starter for the glider operation, because the gliders are using one runway and the powered folks are using the main runway here at Salina.
Yeah, and this is one of the few contests where we mix power and gliders together. So it has its own logistics. We've got slow, quiet, moving aircraft along with a powered aircraft, but they've really done a great job to make this work together in a very nice way.
I think there's a contest in Arizona, a contest in Colorado, and maybe 1 or 2 in California where they have glider and power together. So it's not as you said, it's not a common occurrence. So it just takes a little more coordination and work to keep the glider pilots holds in one area and the powered pilots holds in another area, because as you have one pilot going through, we need to have another pilot going up and being ready, so that when one pilot is done and the judges are ready, we have another pilot coming in, so that we can have a good flow to the contest. And instead of taking 5 hours to get through the category, we can get through it in 2.5.
Yeah, sure. We have 85 competitors here today, and 3 of the categories are flying 3 flights, and the unlimited are flying 4 flights. So that's a lot of flights. So if we don't keep these going in sequence and have somebody in the hold, we just won't get through it. So it's a full day. We started here at 8 o'clock today, and we'll probably finish around 5 or 6 tonight. We're day 4. We started on Sunday. Who do we have next?
And I'm not
Next we have Stephen Thorne diving into the box. He's in the powered Sportsman category. And looks like he's flying the known routine. Starts off with a full loop. And next is a hammerhead, but he's going to start with a 45-degree line, hold to the vertical. And now he wants to pivot right at the top when he stops and finish perfectly straight down.
He's got an RV-14 that he built.
And he's pulling vertical for the shark tooth. And Stephen is flying a Vans RV-14, which is an experimental home-built aircraft, which he built himself. It's capable of aerobatics. It's not a purpose aerobatic aircraft, but he's doing a great job moving this through the box. And next is a 180-degree aerobatic turn. There's over 10,000 Vans RV aircraft flying. It's the most popular kit aircraft in the United States. Absolutely wonderful airplanes. He's going to do a 45-degree upline, cap off, and then 1 1/4 spins. If he goes left, he'll finish towards us. Oh, correction. If he goes left, he'll finish away from us. Next maneuver is a Humpty Bump. He's going to pull vertical, break off the line lightly, and now try bring it around to the vertical down line. Of a 1/4 roll to bring it back across the box. Next is a half Cuban. He's going to come around on the 45 down line, roll out. And that's the end of that figure and the end of his sequence. So if you notice in these flights, when they're flying from our left to the right, just like geometry class, we call that the x-axis, left to right across the box. And the majority of the maneuvers that we fly are left to right. The other axis, just like geometry, we call the y-axis. So if a competitor does a maneuver and they quarter roll, that turns them 90 degrees, and now they're on the y-axis flying back and forth. So the judges are looking for those lines. There's always deductions if you are not clearly on the x-axis or clearly on the y-axis. There's really no in between on that.
And typically for the sportsman category, there's not a whole lot of flying on the y-axis. It's usually x-axis, but when you get up to intermediate, it's a more advanced and unlimited, definitely on the y-axis, and in some cases you have to be careful with those quarter rolls of turning the right direction so you're headed on the right direction on the y-axis, or coming off the y-axis back onto the x-axis, that you want to go into the box and not turn it, end up going out of the box, which happens.
Yeah, it can be very confusing, and I think
Next competitor, we're going powered sportsman, flying a known on a blue form. Powered sportsman, known blue form.
I think for the sportsman category, you know, the flying the y-axis can be confusing, and you can lose orientation on the box, and probably the reason we see, you know, maybe one pass on the y-axis and everything else on the x-axis.
I believe the next competitor is going to be flying.
Yeah, we have Christopher Rudd, and Chris is flying an extra 200. We know Chris well, he's been around a while. He's in the Power Sportsman, and he is flying the known routine.
Chris is one of the go-to guys when there's questions regarding aerobatic aircraft. If you have questions, very knowledgeable mechanic by profession, and people have questions, Chris is one of those that they go to with issues, and he has a very nice yellow extra 200 with, I believe, red and blue stripes, and I believe Hector Ramirez, who is the unlimited category chief judge, is his partner in the aircraft.
Yeah, I think they've had that aircraft, they got it last season, and they're both flying it. Yeah, Chris is always around, and it's great because he always comes with his toolbox, and you know, we have mechanical issues, he helps out. Yesterday he changed the tire on Corey Garulis' extra. He got a flat at the end of our intermediate flight yesterday, so it's just great to have everybody here just seems to jump in and help out and do whatever we need to do so everyone can get their flight in and be safe.
And that's one thing about the aerobatic community. It's a very supportive community, very helpful community. People are willing to jump in and help out when and where they can.
All right, so Chris is now diving into the box. You see his wing wags. Entering from your left. And first figure is a loop. Now what we're looking for in this loop is you want it to be perfectly symmetrical and round. Probably the most difficult part is right over after they cross the top. Now to push out to fly it round. And I commented on this one because I know Chris pushes that out well, just like he did. Next is the hammerhead. It's going to pull vertical. Wait till the airplane just about stops, and now kick the rudder. I think, Keith, that's one of the most fun maneuvers when you first start flying aerobatic aircraft, is to go straight up and straight down.
Yes, it is.
Next is the shark's tooth. Again, he's going to pull vertical. Pull over the top, probably around 80 knots of airspeed. Finish on a 45 down line, and now 2 of 4. Next we have a half loop up, and right at the top he'll roll out without drawing a line, and into a full roll. Up. So Chris has wagged his wings before the roll, indicating he's going to take a break and reposition. One of the interesting things, Keith, is, you know, when I share with friends that I fly aerobatics, they immediately think, oh my gosh, you know, is this dangerous and how could you do this? And I think it's important for people to realize that competitive aerobatics. This is not air show flying that we do.
Correct.
And it's different in a lot of ways. One, we're flying, well, air shows are flying purpose-built aircraft, but here we're flying for precision. This is more like a gymnastics routine, and each one of these figures is scored out of 10 points. So we're trying, you know, not to be more than 2 degrees off on our upline, and this is not showboating by any means.
Definitely, and the criteria, you start with a perfect score, and then the deductions come in, and I have proven you can get a lot of deductions if you don't fly it well, but when you do fly it well, the judges reward you for that, for that excellent flight.
The big thing is not to make big mistakes, not to miss a figure. If you miss a figure, it's a 0 for that figure. So to do well, you can't 0 a figure, but just to fly as precisely and smoothly as you can.
And when you're flying air shows, you're not getting scored. You're going for the wow factor. Here, it's not a wow factor. So Chris is wagging back in. Yes.
So he should be resuming his sequence with a full roll. And there he goes. Aerobatic turn. And now he's going to fly a 45-degree upline, and this is to lose the speed so we can cap off just above stall speed and then initiate a stall and a spin. And this is going to be a 1 1/4 rotation spin. He's going to the left, so he's going to finish away from us again on the y-axis because he's going away from the judges. Next maneuver is a Humpty bump. He's going to do the Humpty bump over the top, straight down. And his last figure is a half Cuban. He's going to pull up and around, establish a 45 down line, and then roll, half roll here. And again, pull level. And he did a really good job of keeping the line the same length before and after that half roll, and that's one of the judging criteria.
One of the things our viewers can't see, but when you look at the figures that it's printed out, we call it arresti. It's like a hieroglyphics of aerobatics where a figure represents a maneuver, and we have numbers associated. And as you said, 2 of 4, it's 2 points of a 4-point roll. So you would do a half roll, but you draw 1 point 90 degrees and then another point, but they have to have that hesitation in there so it's not looking like just a half roll on its own. So there's some subtleties in there between if you're doing a 2-point roll or a 2 of 4, which would be 2 points on a half roll. And again, that comes with practice and getting critiquing and coaching to tell you how it looks from the ground. It may look great in the air to you. It may look vertical to you, but on the ground, does it? Does it look even? And it's hard to get the timing down to center those rolls on 45 lines or 45 up lines or quarter rolls on a down line.
Yeah. And we're waiting a few minutes for our next competitor, which is going to be a glider flight. So we were talking, Keith, a little bit before about the scoring. And so we have a routine, which is a compilation of figures. And then each figure may have different points. So for example, you could have a loop, and on the top of the loop you could have a roll, and that would be called an element. And it's that combination of the figure plus the elements which gives an overall difficulty score, which we call a K value. So if a figure has a K value of, say, 20 points, and you can start with 10, the total number of points you could get is 200.
And that's where it's that level of difficulty, the K factor, and when you add more rolls or add additional elements, that builds up the K factor. Is you can fly it well, you can score a lot of points. If you don't fly it well, you're going to leave on the table a lot of points. Now Greg is, I believe, flying a Fox glider, and his first maneuver should be a 30-degree upline. And he's trying to slow the glider down because he's going to go in, follow that in with a 1.5 turn spin. All the way around to 1.5. Draw the line down, pull out. Not the perfectly horizontal. Next figure is going to be the loop over the top. And coming out of the loop, he should have plenty of speed for a lay down Humpty, which is going to be for the pilots a 30-degree up, half roll, half loop around, 30-degree down line, and then pull out. Establish that line. Come out. Come across the box to a half Cuban, which would be a 5/8 loop up. And as he comes over the top, he's going to draw a 30-degree down line, half roll, followed by a clover leaf, which again, it's a loop with a quarter turn, quarter roll on it, and it'll come out on the y-axis, and they'll do a 90-degree competition turn, 60-degree bank or greater, and finish with the slow roll. And wagging out, end of last figure, end of sequence.
So
Nicely flown.
Keith, that's the Fox high performance aerobatic glider that he's flying, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and you could see just how crisp that was in flight. He was fast and he was crisp.
It flies faster than the DGs for the maneuvers, and it has a greater roll rate because the design is for aerobatics, not a mix of cross-country and aerobatics, which the Air Force pilots have. And for the Air Force pilots, it's a greater challenge to be able to, but they have a very, very robust glider program at the Academy, and typically it starts in the summertime, I believe between their freshman and sophomore year, that they get glider training, and then they can move on to either the aerobatic team, or they do have a cross-country team. But again, it's a great way to get started with training them as pilots for futures in the U.S. Air Force.
And you fly both power and gliders.
Yes, early on I flew, had some time in an S2B with Bill Finnegan out of Maryland, and flew basic. It shows you how long ago, which was the initial primary, but it was called basic back then, and he flew safety pilot. And then more recently been flying gliders, and I enjoy both. The challenges are the same overall, but it's...
So do you think flying gliders for someone like myself that flies power, that could potentially improve the power skills?
Yes, it can. There are differences. I had to unlearn some habits as a power pilot to get my glider rating. And there are just some differences that once you figure it out, hey, great. And then you get into the aerobatic side, but again, it's different because of you have bigger wings, the effect of the wings on the tail surface. You don't have power, so whereas it come out of maneuver, you want to go horizontal and draw that line, you can just add power. With the glider, I had to remind myself a little bit of a down line. Yeah,
Yeah, it was fun watching this last flight finish, and you're wondering, oh, he's got to make it back to the runway now.
Well, that's why they finish at 1,500 feet, and then they'll turn around, and the gliders have their own runways that they're using here at Salina. The airport has the huge main runway, but they have a couple other smaller runways, and the glider, those smaller runways here at the airport are closed except for the glider operations, so that they can go and land on those runways. And the box is close enough, it's not an issue for them. And the gliders have air brakes or spoilers, which if they need to lose altitude, you pop those out and that glider will come down pretty darn quick.
Yeah, we have a 12,000 foot runway here that they used to use for B-52s, and that's not the one they're landing on.
Correct. The tower would be a bit upset if a glider pilot decided to land on the runway.
So we talk about performance of gliders as far as a glide ratio, how many feet out to down, and that's pretty variable, right?
It is a variable, but the aerobatic gliders are not that great because the wing design and the airfoil design is for aerobatics and not.
Let's pick that up. Diving into the box, we have Tim Liu, Sportsman, and he's flying the known routine.
He's one of the Collegiate students. I think he MSU. Metro State.
He's starting with a loop. He wants to float this out and try and make it even. And the loop is one of the maneuvers where you're supposed to try and adjust for your winds. 45, pulling to the vertical. Next will be a hammerhead. It's going to stop the airplane and rotate to straight down. Next maneuver is a shark tooth. He's going to pull vertical. Pull over inverted to 45-degree down. And then do 2 points of a 4-point roll. 1, 2. Next is a half loop up, and he's going to roll to upright. Followed by a full roll. Nicely done. Now a 180-degree turn. Now these are called aerobatic turns. The wing bank has to be at least 60 degrees. And they're looking for that bank to stay the same all the way around. Then he should stop on heading and then abruptly roll level. Next we have a 1 1/4 spin. He's capped off, slowing the airplane down to stall, and then kicking the rudder to rotate the aircraft. And he's selected to bring this to us. This is the Humpty Bump maneuver. Quarter roll, back to the x-axis. And to his last figure, which is a half Cuban. And on the 45 down line, he will roll to upright. And that's the end of the sequence for a Tim Liu.
And as you stated before, Peter, that the centering that roll on the down lines and up lines is it's a timing thing, and it takes a lot of practice to get that down and figure that out. Has that been your experience with that?
Yeah, sure. And the difficulty is because your speed is changing. When you first pull over the top, you're doing maybe 60 or 80 knots. So you have to count longer for that first straight part of the line, and then you do your element, which may be a half roll or a full roll, and now you're really cooking, so it has to take less time before you pull level, or those lengths will be uneven, and that's always a challenge to try and get them just right. Most of the pilots will count. They'll have some type of counting system where they'll pull over and count 1, 2, roll, 1, pull, and by counting they can kind of adjust for their speed a little bit by changing their counts.
Judges! Next competitor! Glider! Sportsman! It's a free on the white form! Free on the white form! Sorry, Jack Caston. Glider, Sportsman, free, white form, Jack Caston. I'm gonna have to figure it out by the last glider, it'd be great.
As you may have heard, the chief judge was shouting instructions to the other judges to get them up to speed on who the next pilot is, because again, juggling powered, glider, and Sportsman, and then primary, glider, and airplanes are being shared, gliders are being shared, so there's a lot of making sure of who's in what order and getting enough spacing between pilots that you can get one pilot out, get fuel, get a new pilot in, and get them ready for the next. So the next pilot, being a glider, looking at the schedule, should be one of the Air Force Academy gliders flying, and right now he's still under tow on the base leg, looking up at him. You're probably on video seeing a nice glider. I'm looking at a kind of a light figure in the sky with a dark figure pulling it along. So all our viewers have the advantage of a nice picture of a white glider, and I'm struggling at times to make sure I can keep track of him in the sky against a white thing against a light blue sky, because we have beautiful weather today here at Salina, Kansas.
Hey Keith, we have the wing wags. Looks like she's ready to start a sequence.
Okay, the first maneuver is a split S, which would be a half roll followed by a half loop down. Trading altitude for airspeed, he will then pull on a 30-degree upline to bleed off the airspeed to allow him to lead into a 1.5 turn spin. And once again with gliders, you can't hear them. And the 1.5 turns should allow him to come back across the box towards the judges, draw that down line, get some airspeed for the next maneuver to be a Humpty Bump, which will be a vertical upline, and for gliders it'll be a short one, a half loop over the top, and then a vertical down line, pulling out, coming back at the judges again to your right, followed by a half Cuban, five-eighths loop up and around, draw a 30-degree down line, half roll, end of the figure, pull up to a 45, push over to a vertical down line, pull out. We're going to follow it by a 180-degree competition turn. Again, set that 60-degree or greater angle of bank, stop the turn, come back to 0 angle of bank, and then follow it with a full slow roll. And those pilots are working the controls. And notice, with the DG-1000, because of the airfoil, when he got upside down, you notice the nose was much higher than in the Fox. And again, that's simply because of the design in the airfoil, that to fly level in that airplane, it's a much greater nose up. So the pilot or cadet is pushing that forward stick to keep the nose up, to keep it going correctly, because if they don't, if the nose comes down and when they roll out, they could easily dish out and come way off heading when they finish the maneuver. And I can personally attest to that can happen.
Yeah, it's interesting comparison, like the Fox and this glider, very similar to the Extra and the Decathlon, where the Decathlon has a non-symmetrical wing, and when they roll inverted, you see they have to push up, same thing, considerably higher in order to maintain that lift and fly level. And
when you fly your Extra, do you have to have any nose up or down when you're inverted?
A little bit more, but not a lot.
I was going to say,
not a lot of difference.
It doesn't look like there's any from the ground. So it's a lot more work with some of the airplanes to fly something simple like inverted flight, but you get used to it and you realize what it takes in terms of forward stick and so forth to keep the nose up. Because if you think about it, when you're upside down, you have to push the nose away from you to climb or to go up. You don't pull the stick towards you because now you're pulling the nose towards the ground. Again, when you fly aerobatics, you get used to what the inputs are versus just flying up straight upright and level.
Sportsman. It's a free, it's on a white form. Garrett. Howard, Sportsman, free, white form, Garrett.
All right, judges, and all of us are preparing for the next flight. It's going to be a Sportsman-powered flight. Jarrett Burgess. And Jarrett's flying a free program, which again is his own compilation of maneuvers that he's put together himself.
And I believe he's flying a decathlon, so this is going to be interesting to see how he built his free for the airplane that he's flying.
Yeah, I think there's two components to building your free. I mean, you know, when you first get into the sport, you think, wow, I want to make this look cool. And then you realize, no, I want to get as many points because I want to win. And so you don't build it for a show. You build it for what can I get? You know, each figure starts at 10, as you said, and you go down from there. So what can I get a 10 on? And there's two combinations. What's your skill set as a pilot, which will allow you to fly that maneuver well? What are you comfortable with? And then again, as you mentioned, your aircraft, because there's some performance limitations, and some airplanes do some things better than others. So you really got to think about that, and often, you know, you design your free and you go out and you fly it and you say, that just didn't work, I'm finishing low, or I don't have enough energy, and you go back and you redesign your free, and this should really be the sequence that you can fly the best.
And it also should be the sequence you enjoy the most because you put it together, you put in figures you should like and should be very good at in the airplane.
All right, we have Jarrett entering the base, getting ready to fly into the box, and he's turned into the x-axis. And we see wing wags, and he's ready to start his sequence. He's got a good bit of airspeed for a decathlon. He's pulling up to a 45. Capping off, and that's its own figure, the 45 to the cap. And the next figure is a 1.5 spin. And he took that to the spun to the right. Next figure is a half loop up. And then he's going to fly across the box inverted. Again, as we mentioned before, this inverted time gives him the opportunity to find his best possible box position before he starts his next figure. Now he has a half loop down, which is a great position. He has a full roll, and that's where we've seen other pilots struggle, but he's got plenty of airspeed after that half loop down. Nicely done. Pulls to vertical, And now he caps off and flies the box inverted. He's just flying through center box, pulls it vertical downline. Now he's going to pull to a 45-degree upline. Judges are looking to see exactly 45 degrees, followed by a pull to vertical and a hammerhead turn at the top. Next figure is a Humpty Bump. Again, perfect vertical upline, followed by capping with a half circle on the top and a perfectly vertical downline. He has a second hammerhead in his sequence. He's going to pull vertical. Pivot on the axis and fly the downline. Now you see he had two hammerheads in his routine, Keith, but they're different because one had a 45 upline.
Mm-hmm.
You can't repeat the same sequence, but that allowed him to do two hammerheads. There's a half loop up, rolls out, and now a 90-degree aerobatic turn to finish his sequence. And this is a nice way to finish. He's turning it straight towards the judges to take it right over the top of us.
I think one of the things our viewers may notice, it seems that a lot of the pilots are using an up maneuver to set up the spin. And it's a nice way to bleed off speed but also gain altitude, because a spin is going to eat up a lot of altitude. When you want to do the spin, then you want to cover and draw a nice downline to pull out for the next maneuver. So it works out really well. Yeah. You might find some folks might do like a half loop up, roll out like they just did, and that they're slow there, that they might use that to slow the airplane down. Because if you just come blowing into the box and you're going to do a spin, you could go out the other end of the box before you get the aircraft slowed down.
You're going to be coasting right through the box. But yeah, like you said, it's a good point. So most aircraft, these aircraft are anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 feet for a 1.5 spin, and the bottom of their box is 1,500 feet. So they really need to climb up to about 3,000 feet when they initiate that spin, so they don't get called low at the bottom. So that's the point. Climb up, get to the altitude that you need to complete that maneuver safely.
How much altitude, for example, if you were to draw a 45 upline or vertical upline in your extra, could you go like 1,500 feet?
The extra is the 330SC is so powered, I think you could go up 2,000 feet.
So the ability of the aircraft to be able to gain altitude, because a lot of the maneuvers that we fly are losers of altitude.
Sure.
So it's nice to be able to have some maneuvers built in that you can gain.
Yeah, and he did a great job putting this maneuver together. As I commented before, we've seen. Is he ready?
Just let me know.
Okay. Next up is glider. As we've seen, several of the decathlons need to wag out before they roll without enough speed. He set this up that he down looped, picked up lots of speed, and he had plenty of bang coming in so he could hit that roll and do a nice job with that.
That was a well-designed sequence.
Yeah, he flew it well, and it was set up for the aircraft.
Help the scores, that would be wonderful, please. If your assistants, please at least, if you want credit, write your name down. I don't care about your numbers. If anything like that,
I believe our next competitor is going to be a glider. And the glider should still be on tow. That'll give me a chance to mention some about our gold sponsors, Aircraft Spruce. Great place to get everything and anything aviation, especially in the experimental community. Big supporter. Arizona Soaring. They have an aerobatic glider school, and they run the Glider Nationals. Jim and Terry Brandsteyer out of Northwest Insurance, big supporters for the EAA and IAC. And we have the glider off tow, slowly heading towards the box.
There's the cute little dainty wing wag. Yeah.
We have Gabriella Castaneda in the box.
Flying,
Glider Sportsman.
flying Sportsman in one of the
Is this a free?
That was a 1.5 turn spin. Coming back towards the judges. Next maneuver should be a Humpty bump. Pull to vertical, half loop over the top. Draw the vertical down line. Head and drive more towards the judges again. Followed by the half Cuban, which is going to be your 5/8 loop up and around. Draw a 30-degree down line. Half roll to upright. Continue with that 30-degree down line. Now I'll pull to 30 up. Push to a vertical down line. Pull out, competition 180-degree turn, 60-degree bank or greater. Keep that bank the same all the way through. Finish the turn, then roll out. Finishing with the slow roll. And again, if you notice with the DDG 1001 gliders with the Air Force, there's more nose up when inverted, and nicely done. And wing wagon done.
For any viewers out there just joining us, you're joining our live feed from Salina, Kansas. This is the 2023 U.S. National Aerobatic Championships. Commentary with me is Keith Doyne. We've got Forrest Fox doing our video for us, and Lori Penner also working our graphics and keeping everything moving. Having a great day, absolutely beautiful day today. You've joined us for the Sportsman Power and also the Glider Power and Primary, and so far we're about 2/3 of the way through the morning program. Have a full day coming to you today. Around 11 o'clock we're going to have the Unlimited guys flying, 9 top performers in the world. In the afternoon we're going to have Intermediate. So a full day. Hope you stay with us.
And a few more of our gold sponsors. Guy Atchison, who is a glider pilot who had been on an advanced team to represent the U.S. David and Martha Martin. David's an air show pilot, but a former Unlimited competitor in the IAC. Goody Thomas, a current Unlimited competitor shooting for the team. Rob Holland, the current U.S. national champion air show pilot. Johnny Wacker, another Unlimited pilot. Robin Simmons, and Robin flies a Fox glider in, and then Lift Aviation, which has various products used, aviation products available. One of the popular ones is their Lift Aviation helmet, used by glider pilots that you can get.
of a name.
Wayne Forbes.
If I remember correctly, if this is Mr. Wayne Forbes, he's going to be flying a Panzel 330, which is a very high performance monoplane. It was built by Greg Panzel, which is and it was a modification of a monoplane design by John Stoddicker, who built some very stout, strong monoplanes early on, back in the 90s and 2000, and Greg just took the design and improved it even further, and it's an awesome machine. And there are still folks in the advanced category that are flying Stoddickers and the Panzels. I believe Mike Lentz, who's on the U.S. team for the Advanced Worlds Aerobatic competition.
And Craig Gifford for several years flew as Stoddicker competitively. That's now his airshow plane.
And I think Mike is running that for the Advanced Worlds.
Yeah, beautiful red, white, and blue aircraft. Yeah, they're extremely high performance, and they've been flown all the way through the unlimited level. Our next pilot we have up is in the Sportsman powered category. This is going to be Wayne Forbes, and he's preparing to enter the aerobatic box and start his sequence. We see the wing wags. Pulls to vertical, caps off, and 1.5 spins. Nice long down line there. Now he's going to pull to vertical. Fly inverted across the box. Now he has a vertical down line. Next figure is a hammerhead. And you can see in this very high performance aircraft, absolutely no difficulty with power management. Plenty of power to do anything that he needs to do here. And there's the hammerhead. Figure 6 is a Humpty Bump. He should place this right in front of the judges, which he is doing. Nicely flown maneuver. Now he has a 45-degree upline. He'll pull vertical for a hammerhead.
He does not have to struggle for vertical performance in that airplane.
No difficulty there. And next figure is a shark's tooth, which means he'll pull vertical. And then again, around 80 knots or so, he'll pull over onto his back and fly a inverted downline with a 2-point roll. Half loop up. And now a 90-degree turn. And that was nicely flown.
It was.
Made it look easy.
I think some of the decathlon pilots would like to have an extra couple cylinders added on to the engine on their airplane for the performance, because having the horsepower for those vertical lines is nice. You can draw nice long lines and get altitude if necessary. On the flip side though, that airplane is so clean, it takes more time to get it slowed down so you can do that spin. So he has to plan it a little bit. Well, we have time till our next competitor. Our silver sponsors, Full Stop Aviation, Jason Stevens, Mike Goulian, former Unlimited competitor, top air show pilot, Duncan Corbel, he's the Advanced World Aerobatic Competition contest director, Dagmar Kress, who runs the Metro State University Aerobatic program, Patty Wagstaff, former national champion, Unlimited competitor, and current air show pilot and aerobatic instructor. John Wilcombe, Bonehead Helmets, a popular helmet with the aerobatic community. Yuichi Takagi, Yuichi's an air show pilot, Red Fox air shows, and also an advanced competitor and a Pitts S2S. Hooker Harnesses, which is the standard aerobatic harness in almost every aerobatic aircraft we have on the ramp. Very, very popular. And Mr. Lewis Shaw. Those are our silver sponsors. And again, the contest would not happen without sponsors and volunteers and all the time and effort folks put into this to make it happen, because it takes an army of volunteers just to put on a big contest like this, and very grateful. We have a glider pilot entering the box.
Yep, this is Luke Lipitska up next. We have wing wag signaling the beginning of the sequence.
Doing the split S, the half roll, the half loop. 30-degree upline. Slowing that aircraft, slowing the glider down to set him up for the 1.5 turn spin. Draw the down line. It'll be short for the gliders. Gaining the airspeed necessary for the Humpty Bump. Set the vertical upline, half loop, come back around. Draw a vertical down line. Come out, gain your airspeed. Set yourself up for the half Cuban. 5/8 loop, followed by a 30-degree downline, half roll, 30-degree downline, pull it 30 degrees up. It'll be a pushover to a vertical down. Pull out to wings level, to a 180-degree competition turn, 60 degrees of bank. Turning back towards the judges to finish up with a full roll directly in front of the judges. And as you can see with the DG 1001, again, greater nose up than the Fox glider to be able to get that inverted flight as it comes around. Wing wag, end of flight.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of work, Keith, to roll that aircraft. What's the wingspan on the DG approximately?
55 to 60 foot wingspan.
Yeah.
Again, gliders are designed to have long, thin wings to be very efficient and to create lift. And the DG-1000 is a glider that can be used for regular soaring where you want the lift, but also aerobatics. So it's good at both, but not great at one or the other, which is kind of the conundrum with it.
20-meter wingspan, 59 feet.
59 feet.
59. We call that the aspect ratio, right? And that's the relationship between the chord, or the width of the wing at the fuselage, and the total length of the wing. And the higher lift configurations we see have what we call this high aspect ratio wing, right?
Predator, powered, Sportsman, free, white form, Monoplane.
And for a traditional glider, you're really looking at a situation of what they call L over D. How far can I go horizontally for every foot I drop down vertically? The new high performance gliders, they can go 50 feet horizontally for every foot they drop down, which is great. So if you're a mile up off the ground, you can go 50 miles theoretically. But for aerobatics, that's not helpful because that airfoil is not designed for aerobatics. So that's where with the Fox glider, the two-seat Fox, that airfoil is more symmetrical. It flies upright and inverted, very similar, but it's not a great soaring glider as everybody would think. The DG-1001 is a compromise on each. So for the pilots, it's much more challenging to get through the acro, and as you go up in category, Sportsman becomes harder, intermediate becomes really challenging for the pilots, and as you can see, sometimes the nose will want to dish out, and so you really have to push up as you come around in the second half of the roll, so it'll settle to where you want it, which is different than most of the aerobatic aircraft. It's not as much nose high. Now, if I were to fly a clip wing Piper Cub or a clip wing tailorcraft, probably the same thing. A Citabria would probably be the same, where it's really nose high to fly that invert. So as you roll inverted, the nose is going to be much higher. And it's not a roll. If you look at it out the nose of the glider, you're not rolling around the horizon necessarily. The roll actually seems like you're above the horizon, and the roll is above the horizon because the nose high feeling or the nose high look when you're inverted. So, but the pilots get used to it, and the Air Force cadets get a lot of practice up at the Air Force Academy. And so we have another competitor, just did a wing wag.
Yep. Our next competitor coming in is Andrew Coughlin. He is flying the power category. This is his free compilation. And he's pulling to the vertical. He's going to cap off here and perform a 1.5 spin.
Andrew is a student with the University of North Dakota program, one of our collegiates.
The next maneuver is a shark's tooth. He's going to pull to the vertical. And right over to a 45-degree inverted downline. And a half roll out. Next maneuver is a Humpty bump. Straight up, half loop on the top, and straight back down. He's got to pull to vertical. He's going to fly across the box inverted. He's see the aircraft's flying slower inverted as we commented about the increased drag to maintain level flight inverted. He's flying straight down. Here's a half loop up. Again, he's going to fly inverted across the box. Doing a good job at holding that nose up and maintaining level flight there, Keith.
Yes, and it is noticeable from the ground how much nose up it takes to keep that airplane in level flight inverted.
Making him work.
Oh yeah.
This is going to be a loop. Next maneuver is a pull to vertical for a hammerhead. He's wagging his wings. He's going to take a break.
One of the tendencies for folks just getting started in aerobatics, the loop is a simple, basic aerobatic maneuver, but it's so easy to get to over pull, and you pull hard first, and as you're coming around, you keep that pressure back, and you pinch the loop over the top, and it's not a nice round loop. It looks like a comma, where you're coming up and it comes up really early. There's a finesse of easing off the back pressure so that it rounds the loop and then adding the pressure back in. I'm not sure if the extra flies the same way, how much release of back pressure when you do like a looping maneuver that you would experience, Peter.
Yeah, as you come up, as you pull up over the top, you really have to feel that float like a zero G, like you're just floating in the aircraft, not positive or negative. And then just relaxing, the nose kind of drops on its own, and if you pull at all, you're going to come down too quick, and you're not going to finish that third and fourth quarter. And then after the third quarter, you're accelerating straight down, and you start to pick up speed, and that's when you have to add the back pressure gradually to finish a nice round shape.
A simple maneuver, but takes a lot of work to make it look nice and present nice to the judges.
We have Andrew. He's working to reposition himself in the box to start again here. It was an interesting break, Keith. Perhaps he felt he didn't have enough energy to fly that vertical upline.
It's very possible. Either that or he wasn't happy with his position in the box, that he felt that he would be pushed out of the box or pushed away.
So you can, as we talked about earlier, you can take a break, but there is a point deduction to your total score for taking breaks. But usually that's, in the lower categories, that point deduction is very small because they want to encourage these earlier pilots to be safe and take a break if needed rather than worry about the point deduction.
Yeah, and if you talk to the more senior pilots, they'll tell you, for the new pilots, if you're not sure, take a break, collect yourself, and like you said, it's a very low point deduction for a break. Now, when you go up into the higher categories, in the advanced unlimited, taking a break is costly.
Yep, they make you pay. So he's back in the box, he's wagged in, and great position now, pulling to the hammerhead, right in front of the judges. Vertical down line. And final maneuver is a full roll.
Nicely flown.
Yeah, that was well worth the reposition there.
Wagged out.
So I think something else interesting to talk about is the spin maneuver. So if I ask you as an aerobatic pilot, what's a spin to you? Your response, I imagine, would be what?
It's an aerobatic maneuver that we're going to fly either a full turn spin, 1 1/4, 1 1/2, or a 2-turn spin, and you're going to stall the airplane.
Sportsman, free, white form. Another Andrew Fisher.
And you'd categorize that as a relatively easy beginner level maneuver, right? So I always find it interesting that now for private pilots they teach spin avoidance, that they don't teach spin training, and I remember when I got my private license, this spin thing was this maneuver to avoid that would kill you, and to fly it and realize that this is just a basic aerobatic maneuver, easy to fly.
It is, and actually,
Sportsman, known blue form with the wrong line, Andrew Fisher.
All right, we're taking little breaks here as we try and figure out who the next pilot is. But anyway, back to the spin. There's a lot of discussion about whether or not private pilots should get spin training when they do it. Again, a basic maneuver, and when you talk about, oh, you'll get into a spin, well, how do you know if a spin starts if you've never experienced it? You have to know where it starts.
and it all starts with stalling the airplane at a slow speed. If you're turning and gaining speed, you're in a spiral. But if you keep that spin, if you keep the airspeed and you're spinning, and the wings stalled. To us, I learned spins. It was a one-turn competition spin, so it's like, okay, stick back. It stalls. Put the rudder in. You're spinning around, and somewhere around 5/8 to 3/4 of the way, stick forward, opposite rudder. Stop all the rotation. Check your downline, count, and pull out and add the power back in, and you're good to go.
Diving in the box, we have Andrew Fisher, power sportsman, and he's going to fly the known routine. We have wing wags. He's ready to start.
I believe he's one of the UND collegiate students.
Nice big round loop here. Let's see if he pushes it out. He's doing a good job pushing it out there.
There's no downgrade for big or small loops. It's how well you fly it in terms of shape.
They got to be round. Pull to the vertical for a hammerhead. Next is what we call a shark's tooth. He's going to pull vertical. Now pull over on his back for a 45-degree downline. Set the line, and now a 2-point roll. 1, 2, continue the line, and pull level. We have a half loop up. He's going to roll out. And now a full roll. And he's wagging out. So again, same situation we talked about before, Keith, about energy management. They're doing this half loop up and they're burning off the speed, coming off on the top, and they're slow. And not only are they slow, they're downwind, so they're losing airspeed as they turn downwind, which I think is exacerbating the situation for them.
Yeah. And for the decathlon, it takes some time to build up the airspeed to get set up to do that roll. And it's smart to go ahead and wag out, come back around, get yourself set up.
Yeah, the compensation for that would be on this maneuver before 3, when they fly this downline to fly it and get as much speed as they can and half loop up a little bit tighter and try and have enough energy at 5, but it's still difficult in this aircraft.
With the decathlon, yeah. Looks like he's coming back around.
Back in the box, we have wing wags. Next figure should be a full roll. And now he has a 180-degree aerobatic turn.
When he's done, next category is going to start on the other side.
45-degree upline. And we're going to see him cap off here for a 1 1/4 spin.
Whatever that was, just
We took that to the left, so he's finished towards us. A little bit on top of the judges here, straight over our heads. Pulling vertical for the humpy bump. And back around. Straight down. Now he should have a quarter roll to the right. This is a half Cuban, 45 downline, rolling out. And that's the end of his sequence. And if you're just joining us, if you've just signed on, you're watching the 2023 U.S. Aerobatic Championships out of Salina, Kansas. Co-hosting with me is Keith Doyne. I'm Peter Nassar.
Peter, what category do you fly in?
I fly in the intermediate category. We had our first flight yesterday. A lot of fun. We have 7 competitors in the group.
One of the things that our viewers probably don't know, but for the intermediate, the advanced, and the unlimited, they get to fly a flight called the unknown. And can you tell some of our viewers, when I say the unknown or free unknown, what does that entail?
Yeah, I think the most intimidating thing about moving from sportsman to intermediate is this unknown. So as we talked about before, we fly the known, and that's released in the beginning of January. So you get to fly that all year long. And then you have your free, as we talked about, that's your own compilation, so you ought to be able to fly that well. It's your sequence. And then what happens is, at the end of the day, about 6 p.m., at least the rules are 24 hours before, they open a sealed envelope, and that's got a routine that no one has seen, and they hand it out. And you have to study that, and you have to fly that. And you can't practice. Once the contest starts, there's no practice flying, so you've never flown it. So you're going to dive into the box. You do your best to walk this routine out, and there's several steps to really try and prepare well. One is looking at each figure and deciding which ones you fly well, which you don't, and what are the key points that you need to make sure that you hit. Looking at altitudes, one of our past coaches, Nikolai Timofeyev, always talked about underwater stones, meaning you would hit them and, you know, am I going to lose altitude here and run out? So normally we figure this out by flying these routines, but you can't. You need to figure this out so that you can fly at your best that day.
And from what I've seen, I've never flown intermediate, advanced, or unlimited, but from what I've seen, the other flying the ointment, so to speak, is when you have quarter rolls and 3/4 rolls, figuring out which way you're going to turn so you're going the right way in the box to the next figure.
Yeah. So most competitors, you know, on your card, you will mark out left or right, and instead of thinking, am I turning left or right, we always mark which way we're pushing the stick. That way you don't have to think about a direction. It's just the stick goes to the left, and that rotates you left, of course. But and also right pedal, left pedal for your feet. And a lot of us will put numbers on our sequence card as to where we want to be, either on the x-axis, left to right, or y-axis, so we know exactly where we want to start that figure. And we'll put left or right on the card. So we'll walk through all this before we fly. And occasionally you'll change that left or right if you're out of position in the box. But you know, my coaching from the upper level and the unlimited guys is really try and stick to your plan so you don't get in trouble or you don't get confused in it. But it's a lot of fun. It's a real lot of fun.
I've always, when I've seen the unknowns fly, what seems to trick a lot of the pilots up is they put combinations of rolls in the maneuvers that, if flown correctly, you go back and forth on the box, or you go from the y-axis and you turn the right direction. And I've seen pilots practice it one way, and I'm comfortable this way, and all of a sudden the next day the winds have changed, and now they've got to, oh wait a minute, I've got to turn this way with this maneuver, which means I've got to turn this way with another maneuver, and they're getting cattywampus, and inevitably somebody turns the wrong way and they realize, oh rats, I'm going the wrong direction, I'm going out of the box, they wag out. And so it helps challenge, separate out the folks that are really good at flying it and have got it figured out. And it's just one that some people love flying unknowns and some people dread flying unknowns.
I mean, you could make the comment it separates the boys from the girls, but since we have a woman leading the advanced category right now, that wouldn't be the right way to put it. But it and hats off to Brittany Lincoln for that. But anyway, it really is. It's really challenging. It's a lot of fun. And as you said, they may change the wind direction right before your flight, and you've walked through this sequence, 10, 15 times, and you have it perfectly in your brain. And now you've got to go back and change your card and change the directions that you're going. So,
for the folks that have been practicing, and sometimes, I think for folks that have practiced, I don't know for the intermediate, but for folks in advanced and unlimited, doing all the roll combinations left to right, you have to be able to do it. Snap rolls the same way. Are you feeling that way for intermediate when you fly?
yeah, I'm just starting to learn the right side stuff, and it's like anything else in life. We go up and we practice stuff we feel comfortable with, and the best advice I can give myself and the upper level guys that I'm getting some coaching from, unlimited guys, is if you feel uncomfortable, that's what you need to fly when you go out. What do you like doing the least? Go out and do that and become equal on both sides. So that's one of the goals. I really think, Sportsman is great. Intermediate, we start introducing, snap rolls and a few other components. It's really the advanced level where I think the next level of commitment comes, advanced. And there's only a handful of guys in the United States flying unlimited.
Well, I think with the advanced, you get more outside or negative G maneuvers than you would see in the intermediate category. And I hear that's one of the big changes, the amount of outside maneuvers, the amount of negative Gs. And so that's why some folks don't move up to advanced or stay in advanced and don't move up to unlimited, simply because of how hard it is on the body when you're flying at that level. You're going anywhere from +7 or 8 positive Gs to -5 or -6 Gs in a sequence, and that's a workout.
Yeah, and I've been practicing advanced sequences, and if you practice one level higher than you're flying, it helps. And negative Gs aren't fun. Negative Gs don't feel good. So you really have to get used to doing that. And so you move into the advanced category, you have the negative Gs, you have more rolling turns, more snap rolls. But then when they move into unlimited, they're adding the tail slides and they're adding outside snap rolls, which is a whole nother maneuver, which that only exists in the unlimited category. So, but it's great to have, it's such a skill set to be able to progress and compete in each category moving forward, that it's really been set up beautifully by the IAC, the International Aerobatic Club.
Well, some of the original founders, if you go back and take a look at the sequences of unlimited in the 1980s and the airplanes we had available, it would be intermediate today, but we didn't have
Yeah, I think they refer to that, Keith, as category creep. So the aircrafts have gotten higher performance, the training's gotten better. We see that in all sports. And yeah, flying at the highest level we've ever seen today. It's really impressive. And stay tuned in if you're with us. At around 11:30, the unlimited guys are going to fly, and you are going to be in for a real treat.
Because I believe this is their free unknown?
They fly a free unknown, which is a really interesting term. These are the SEVA, or the European rules. And it's interesting. So each person competing gets to submit figures, and then there's mandatory figures that they have to have in the sequence, but then they get to take them home that night and arrange them into their free. So really challenging and really difficult.
And it may be maneuvers with combinations they've never flown before. which makes it even more challenging to some of them.
They get to put them in the order they want, but they still have to fly the maneuvers that are listed, and they get some connecting maneuvers if they need to that they can put in. But it's quite the challenge.
And I will say this, on some of the maneuvers that I've seen shown in the free unknown, I think that one of the maneuvers had at least 4 rolling elements in it, in one maneuver. And the level of difficulty was like 64K. That's one of the most, very high difficult. Every part of where you could add a roll, the pilot added a roll,
Yeah,
or a roll combination, and that.
To get your brain working that quick and that well programmed to get all of that in, because it's all happening so fast at that level, is really the challenge.
And yet we have 9 pilots in the unlimited category to say, I'm up for the challenge. Let's go fly it and see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be a real treat.
For our viewers, yes, because they're going to be saying, oh my dear Lord.
It's going to be a real treat for us.
Yeah?
I think we're waiting for our next pilot, a glider, to position.
And while we have a few seconds, another silver sponsor that I didn't get to mention is Warren Sillers out of Sillers Aviation down in Florida.
And
Warren does a lot of work on aerobatic aircraft in the Florida area, especially extra aircraft and pit specials. And now we have a glider. It's a SZD-59, flown by Larry Ruggiero. He's going to be flying primary. So he's into the cloverleaf, a loop with a quarter roll, and when it comes out of that, he's going to do a 270-degree turn. And when he rolls out, get wings level, setting himself up for a roll. Into the wing over, which is a climbing, turning maneuver, and when you're at the peak of the turn, the wings should be vertical, pointing to the ground, and the second half of the maneuver should match the first half of the maneuver. And going across the box to gain a little more speed, to have enough speed to do the loop to finish.
next year.
Now Larry's glider, the SZD, is I believe it's a European-made glider that has been flown at the advanced level at the world stage.
Keith,
And there's several in the U.S. that are flown.
Yeah, Keith, I think he just wagged out and was taking a break, which is unusual for the gliders, right?
I think he's done because the loop would be the last maneuver.
Okay, he's finished his sequence.
Because if he's wagging out and if he thinks he's going to get altitude, I don't think it's going to happen here today.
Next competitor is glider, Sportsman, free, on a white form, Ellenson.
I believe this is going to be another of the Air Force Academy cadets flying a DG 1001. I believe that's a German-made glider. Yep.
All right, glider, Sportsman, free, white form, Ellenson. Everybody copy? Who do I have right now?
So Keith, all of the powered aircraft, we fly our 45-degree, our downlines, we fly 45-degree downlines, but the gliders fly 30-degree downlines, correct?
Correct, and that would be for the primary, Sportsman, intermediate. And the thought process behind that is a 45-degree downline, you're going to use up a lot of altitude pretty quick if you're not careful, and you could overspeed. So they're trying to get the more experienced, get that experience in flying the maneuvers, but also learning to not, you chew up so much altitude because you can't get it back. You're going to have to land and get retowed back up to altitude. And it's not like the power folks where you can just add power and climb back up. Gliders, once you're off tow, you go as you get what you got.
Now,
and that's what you got to work with.
Now in a glider, if you get too low and you wag out, can you land and get a retow? Will they allow you to finish your flight, or are you done?
That's a good question. I've never seen it happen per se. I think at that point the pilot would probably say no, and it would take a lot of time to be able to do that. Okay, the glider is now off tow, heading towards the box. And the first maneuver should be what we refer to as a split S, which is a half roll to inverted with a half loop down. It allows the pilot to trade that altitude for airspeed and come back and come around to the other direction. And pull a 30-degree upline and cap it off, setting himself up for the 1.5 turn spin. One and a half rotations. Stop it, draw the down line, come back towards the judges. To a Humpty, which is you pull the vertical, half loop over and around, vertical down line towards the ground, establish it and pull out. A little bit, make sure you have your airspeed to set yourself up for the half Cuban, which would be a 5/8 loop followed by a 30-degree down line with a half roll on the down. There we go, set that 30-degree, half roll. And this will be a 30-degree up line, pushed over to a vertical down line. Back to horizontal, followed by 180-degree competition turn, and his choice is to fly towards the judges, not away from the judges, setting himself up for being in the middle of the box right in front of the judges to do a nice slow roll.
And it looks like he's established a really nice box position here.
He has. And wing wag out.
So I think we probably have a great combination of viewers today, including families watching their family members fly today and perform today, which is great. I had the pleasure of my daughter watching the live feed fly day before yesterday, or yesterday. That was great. And probably pilots, private pilots out there, some aerobatic pilots. But for those pilots out there that haven't gotten to aerobatics, how did you start aerobatics, and how did you get bit with the bug to do this?
I guess watching some, actually I saw some air racing on TV and talking to my brother, watching a moon landing, and wanting to learn to fly, and then saw, believe it or not, an ad in a newspaper, local newspaper outside of Philadelphia, said, "Do you want to fly at Pitts?" In the ad section.
That's a great way to start.
And
Judges, next competitor, powered, Sportsman, free, white form. Philip Bragg, Sportsman, powered.
should be an S2, S2A. But
And it was that first ride got you right away?
I was in a Pitts S2B at a grass strip north of Philadelphia called Van Zant, and there they had Taylorcraft, Piper Cub, Decathlon, Citabria, Stearman, and a Pitts.
It was an aerobatic buffet.
It was an aerobatic buffet, and it was a couple of airline pilots, and it was like, holy smokes, this is fun. And I got bitten. It was a great challenge to be able to fly those maneuvers. And again, we worked on the basics: spin, loop, roll, half Cuban. And from there, it's like, okay, this is what I like to do. This is what I want to do. And it's been 30 years of on and off trying to keep up with everything. And luckily, when I moved to the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania area, Chapter 58, and there were an active chapter, and there was a chapter in New Jersey and New York. So it was easy. There were lots of people.
So our next pilot up is Philip Gregg. Philip is flying Sportsman Power, and this is going to be his free routine. He's diving in the box nice and high.
Wing wag.
We have wing wags. He's preparing to start his sequence. First figure was a Humpty bump. Second figure, he's going to pull the vertical, cap off for a 1.5 spin. Flying a nice vertical down line. And next maneuver is a shark's tooth. 45-degree downline, half roll, and back to level flight. Next, he's got a vertical upline. He's going to cap off inverted on his back and fly across the box. And vertical downline. Next figure is a 360-degree circle. And he'll pull vertical into a hammerhead turn. He'll slow the aircraft down until there's almost no motion, kick the rudder as hard as he can, and rotate to the downline. Next maneuver is a full roll. Half loop up. And after the half loop up, you'll see he's going to draw a line inverted and stay inverted. And next maneuver is a half roll to upright. And he finishes with a 270-degree turn, so he's taken that away. He'll go 270 degrees and exit over the top of us. and that's the end of his sequence.
So Peter, how did you get started in aerobatics?
So I was flying for many years down in St. Augustine, Florida, and a friend of mine invited me to take an upset training course.
Okay.
I'd never heard of upset courses. I'd been out of flying for a while, and we went, and it was in an extra 300L out of St. Augustine, Florida, and we went up and we had class work regarding what an upset is. If you stall the aircraft and you're not coordinated, meaning your tail is not behind your nose, the airplane will snap inverted or you'll spin. And we went up and we did these upset recoveries where the instructor will hold that aircraft with lots of extra rudder and stall it, and you almost immediately an extra snap inverted on your back, and you learn how to recover from that until that becomes a comfortable maneuver to do. And during that time, we also did some rolls and some loops, and I just thought this was the coolest thing in the world. And I was bitten by the bug, and from there, got into aerobatics.
It seems to be a recurring theme. You fly a maneuver, you enjoy it. You fly another maneuver, you enjoy it. And after that,
Yeah.
you're hooked.
And it's kind of weird because I landed and I was a little bit sick to my stomach. I think 90% of people are when they do aerobatics. It's like, who would want to do this? And then as soon as that goes away, you're like, I can't wait to do it again. So it's.
I agree 100%. We went on vacation to visit my sister-in-law out in the LA area, and this was years ago. And it's like, okay, I think I'm going to go over to Van Nuys because I know somebody there has an S2B that I can go fly, and that's what I did. I went and flew some aerobatics with somebody. Take advantage of it even on vacation.
Yeah. So you were talking about the IAC chapters. There's chapters all across the United States, which are groups, clubs, part of the IAC, and you can look them up on the IAC, IAC.org for all the pilots out there listening that are interested in aerobatics, and find your local chapter. And I would almost guarantee you that if you look up the chapter, somebody there or several people there will want to take you up and want to take you flying. And all of us that are involved in the sport love it so much that the best thing we can do is share it and try and grow the sport. So the opportunity is out there. You just got to look around a little bit.
Take advantage of it. I mean, the worst you can do is learn something new as a pilot. Get comfortable that, okay, you learn to do stalls. What happens after a stall if it gets away? You do a spin. Oh, okay, I did a spin. Oh, wow, that's not as bad as I thought. You learn to control the airplane in all attitudes, and that just makes you a much safer pilot.
Yeah, it's fascinating when you hit this point in your aerobatic flying where there's no longer an unusual attitude to you. You're comfortable in any attitude, and that's super cool position to be in. And certainly before I started or anybody starts aerobatics, it's incredibly uncomfortable. So.
Oh yeah.
And if you don't really want to you say, hey, I'm not really into aerobatics, taking an upset recovery course is just a wonderful way to get some skills.
Oh yes.
Okay, who do we have next? Dropping in the box here.
I believe it's Dick Swanson. He should be flying a KCAB decathlon.
And Dick's flying his free routine, which is his own compilation of figures. First maneuver is a vertical pull upward. And he's going to cap off to 1.5 spins. And Dick is right over the top of us here. Pull to level. Next maneuver is a pull to 45 upline, pull inverted. And now he's going to pull straight down. Fly the vertical line. Next is a pull to vertical. Maybe a little tough to see. Forrest over there is videoing almost straight up. He's going to fly across the box inverted. And back down inverted. And pull level. Next maneuver is a Humpty Bump. He'll pull vertical. Nice round half circle on the top. And finish with the vertical down line. Next maneuver is a hammerhead. He'll pull vertical, slow the airplane, kick the rudder all the way to the left. See that rudder kick, and fly the vertical down line. Next is a shark's tooth. He'll pull vertical. And fly a vertical 45 downline with a half roll. And he's worked his way away from us a little bit. Keith, we can see him a little better now. Next is a half loop up. He'll roll out. And he has a 270-degree aerobatic turn. And he should take that. Oh, he's taking it towards us. You know, exit away on the y-axis. So I think what's happening, Keith, is the wind's actually blowing away from us, but I think the pilots are a little bit concerned that they're going to get blown so far away that they're starting on top of us and expecting the wind to draft them away.
Well, I believe in talking with the contest director this morning that there's actually a wind shear, that the winds on the ground are different from the winds aloft.
Okay.
So it's going to get tricky. One thing I do want to point out to our viewers, if you think aerobatics is for the young folks, Dick Swanson will make you change your mind on that. Dick's in his 70s.
Sportsman, free, white form, pencil.
And he flies very well. He's been flying aerobatics a while,
Sportsman, free, white form, pencil.
but you can still, aerobatics, the only thing that stops you from doing aerobatics is you. When you decide you want to stop, you want to stop. Dick's in his 70s and he keeps flying and enjoys it. There's a gentleman out in Michigan, Hugo Ritzenthal, I believe is how you pronounce his name, and Hugo flies unlimited in a Pitts S1S, and he's mid-70s and does well in it. So it's
impressive.
it's a mindset. And 20 years ago, there was a gentleman out of Canada, Biff Hamilton, who flew advanced, and he was in his 70s, former Spitfire pilot. And
so some of these guys will go and they'll hit 80 and then they can't get insurance, and that's what stops them. They're still doing well, and it's really impressive to see that.
well, I think our IAC Hall of Fame inductee, Lou Shattuck, he flew his last contest when he was 85, I think is what
Yeah, that's impressive.
So there are several aerobatic instructors out there. Bill Finnegan been around forever. Bud Davidson, very experienced, and it's the insurance that, like you said, it's the insurance, but they can fly the aerobatics. They know what they're doing, and they're very good at it. And we're looking for a glider.
And off toe to your left.
Ah, there we are. He's off toe. I believe this is another U.S. Air Force Academy cadet flying. First maneuver is going to be that split S with a half roll followed by a half loop down. Pull to a 30-degree upline. You get that glider slowed down for the following maneuver of 1.5 turn spin. around to 1.5 turns. Draw the vertical down. Pull out, get your airspeed up for the Humpty, which is a pull to a vertical. Half loop over to a vertical down line. Pull out the horizontal. Gain some airspeed for the half Cuban. 5/8 loop up and around. Stop at a 30-degree down line. Half roll. Pilot took a slight interruption to come back around and to get oriented in the right direction, right speed, because he'll pull to a 30-degree upline and then push over to a vertical downline. Pull out, 180-degree competition turn, 60 degrees of bank, pull it around, stop the turn, roll out, get your airspeed up for the loop, not the loop, the roll. Slight wing wag, end of sequence. There's the one case where the glider did take a break and circled around. He didn't wing wag, but circled around to get himself lined up and gets better situational awareness, I'm sure, of being able to set himself up for the next maneuver.
I think one of the amazing things is the love for aviation that we all have. It's kind of interesting. We have several aerobatic pilots here that are airline pilots, like, you know, Goody Thomas and Chris Megan and Corey Garulis and
Jerry Eskenazi.
And it goes on and on. So these are guys, they go to work and their job is, you know, they're flying transcontinental, and when they get home, what do? They go fly. And it just really speaks to how captivating and how hooked we are on the sport.
But there's flying for your job and then there's flying for fun. And I think that's the difference, that the aerobatics is the fun part.
Yeah.
The airline is their job.
And to think that they enjoy flying these, you know, single engine propeller planes more than these, you know, 500,000 pound jets. And this is more fun. It's a great thing.
Judges! Next competitor, Howard, Sportsman, free, white form, Jonathan DeLone. Howard, Sportsman.
Jonathan DeLone is another of the collegiate pilots flying for the University of North Dakota. Should be flying in a decathlon that is shared amongst 5 or 6, 7 pilots across 2 categories, just like the Metro State University students. They're sharing their decathlon, and the academy folks have their glider that is being used by multiple students. But again, it's nice to see young pilots involved in the sport, because they're the ones that'll take our place and continue to grow and make this a great sport. And to get them started early and get them to see the value and the enjoyment and the fun we have. Not everybody would agree that this is enjoyment and fun, but it is.
It has a certain addictive quality, that's for sure.
And the challenge you present to yourself of being able to fly a maneuver, fly it well in the right spot, and being total control when you do it. That I think is, if you're a pilot and you thrive on being the best pilot you can be, aerobatics, upset training has to be part of the equation.
Yeah.
To being comfortable in all attitudes and comfortable in many situations.
Yep, could not agree more with you, Keith.
Wing work!
Okay, diving into the box again, John DeLone, and he's flying Power Sportsman, and this is his free compilation. And first maneuver for John is pull to vertical. Place this right in the center of the box in front of the judges. He's going to cap off and perform a 1.5 positive spin. Next maneuver is a shark's tooth. He's going to pull to vertical. At the top, he's going to pull over to a 45-degree inverted downline with a half roll. And next maneuver is a Humpty Bump vertical upline, half circle at the top, and a vertical downline. And that could be a challenging maneuver because as you pull off the top on that maneuver, you're trying to finish that closing top circle at the same height as where you broke off.
With the wind pushing you around, speed changing, and not being nervous at all.
Exactly. And now he's at the figure 6. He's going to fly a vertical downline. Half loop up, and he'll fly inverted across the box. Again, just pushing this airplane, trying to drive across the box to a half loop down. Next is a full loop. Again, we're looking for symmetry as he comes around, like a nice, big, perfect circle. Oh. He went into his hammerhead there. That was figure 10. Figure 11 is a full roll. Well, either John's looking at the wrong card or I'm looking at the wrong card here. One of the two.
As long as the judges are looking at the same thing that he's flying, it's all good.
Yep. All right, end of sequence.
One of the things I would like to point out to everybody, and you've talked about all the aerobatic club chapters around the country, besides folks coming here to help out, fly, compete, what have you, and working full-time, and having families, they're involved in the organization one way, shape, or fashion. You have chapter presidents, you have Philip Gregg, who flies in this category. He's now on the board of directors. Rob Holland, who's an unlimited competitor, is the vice president. Our current president, Jim Burke, flies unlimited. Most of the folks on the board of directors fly or do other aspects of the organization. Lori's our sport aerobatics editor and other duties as assigned. Steve Kurtzon, who's here helping out, he's the executive director. So for most of us, you're involved. It's not just the flying, but the enjoyment of the people, the enjoyment of the sport, and you want to see it succeed and grow. There's effort in the organization itself, setting up aerobatic practice areas, and John Smutney, who's not competing this year but flies out of the Northwest. He's our government relations person, works with the Federal Aviation Administration folks and local chapters to deal with airspace issues and so forth. So there's a lot of involvement, but you know what? It's all good and it's a lot of fun and a lot of really good people involved in the sport.
Yeah, it certainly is, and we have 85 competitors here, and we're all volunteers too. So we take we're assigned different duties, and whatever it takes to do, whether it's judging or assisting or running scores, and then we have the non-flying volunteers, about 50 folks that are here too, and they have their delegated duties. But then, you know what else they tend to do? Anything that needs to be done, we just get it done. And I think if it wasn't for the people, I wouldn't stay in the sport. If I just came in here and flew my airplane and got a score on a card and left, part of the fun is the camaraderie.
And the other thing I must say and have to give credit to are spouses and family members who support and allow the rest of us to go do and have our fun. And actually there are a number of spouses who are involved in the IAC. Steve Johnson, Alice Johnson, Lori Penner, Gordon Penner.
Lori Ramirez.
And Hector Ramirez.
Yeah.
Monique Hartman, our communications director for the contest, and her husband Don, who's flying or will be flying at the Advanced World Aerobatic Championships. So
Judges, next competitor.
the IAC is like an extended family.
No, blue form, Katnick.
Okay, our next competitor up is going to be Morgan Katnick flying the Power Sportsman. He's going to fly the known sequence for his second flight this week, and we're waiting for him to position and enter the box.
Morgan is flying a decathlon, and he is another collegiate student with the Metro State University folks.
They're about going to wear this airplane out today.
They will. But it's great to see, again, I think Metro State had 9 or 10 students competing in various categories with Dagmar and Nick Slabakov.
And you want to talk about
doing a lot, helping out. And Nick is a judge, competes in the advanced category and puts a lot of time and effort. So hats off to them. Mike Lentz and the University of North Dakota folks. And these collegiate pilots compete amongst themselves and against each other at the Collegiate.
All right, Morgan is diving in. We've got wing wag signaling the beginning of the sequence. And first maneuver is a loop. Well positioned, began the figure in the center of the box, right in front of the judges. And second figure is a hammerhead. First there'll be a 45 line and pull to vertical. And let's look for the rudder kick. There it is.
That's a challenging maneuver in a decathlon because you're pulling up to a 45 and then going vertical in a low performance airplane comparatively.
I think you have to go quick. Next is a shark's tooth. Morgan's going to pull vertical here. Nice vertical line. And pull over the top to a 45-degree down line. And this will be a 2-point roll. 1, 2, and level out. Next is a half loop up. And we've got this roll coming right after it that people have been struggling with right here. And now comes the full roll and wagged out.
He's taking a break.
So again, we've seen at least half the competitors wag out after that upward loop. Just not enough energy to feel comfortable to do figure 5, which is the full roll.
And that's the safe way to go. Take a break, get yourself in a good position because you don't want to get inverted and have that dish out on you and fly a very ugly maneuver because you're just pushing it. This is a smart maneuver. And I was going to look up what the penalties were for taking a break, because I gotta think it.
So Morgan's going to reposition now to fly figure 5 and try and get the best possible location. It's also very important for the pilot not to be confused, because they have to fly this figure in the same direction that it's in their sequence. So if they came in from the other side of the box, then that would be a 0 for that figure, and they'd probably finish the rest of the figures the wrong direction. And I know, because I've done that.
I think everybody at some point does that. And I remember reading about an unlimited competitor, Mike Anderson, and he did a 90-degree turn the wrong direction, and some maneuvers flown were zeroed out because they're in the wrong direction.
And there was the full roll. So we made a good recovery there, 180-degree aerobatic turn. Now a 45-degree upline, as we talked about earlier, to gain some altitude for the spin. 1 1/4 rotation spin. We'll look for the airplane to stall and the nose to drop. And there's the rotation. And into Humpty Bump, we'll see the vertical pull. And a half circle on the top, coming around to a vertical downline. And a 1/4 roll to the right. Well flown figure. And the last figure is a Cuban, half Cuban. Pull up over the top, set a 45-degree downline, and roll out. And that's the end of the sequence. Well flown and good recovery after that break.
I think for primary and sportsman, it's only a 5-point penalty for an interruption. So it's very little to be smart and take a break and come back and set yourself up for success.
Yeah, very, very small penalty. So if you don't like your box position, or you're too low, or you feel like you don't have enough energy to get through the maneuver, those would all be good reasons to take that break and set up to give yourself the best chance for success.
Because actually,
what's the total K for Sportsman?
I'd have to look, but I think you could lose more than 5 points in flying a maneuver poorly if it's 10K and you lose.
Both
And
gliders are primary, big pages. Both gliders. Next one is Brandon Humphreys. Glider primary.
Our next flight's going to be a glider, preparing to come into the box.
I believe the next two will be the primary gliders, as you heard the chief judge let the other judges know.
And next up, Keith, is Brandon Humphreys from the U.S. Air Force Academy.
Should be. Correct, flying the DG 1001. And then Vivian should be the glider pilot, primary glider pilot after Brandon.
We were talking earlier, Keith, about the penalty being 5 points. In this category, the total points are 130 points, and you only lose 5 points. We're talking about a 3% loss to...
Of 100, is it 130K or points?
130K.
So you fly, if you have a loop that's
Times 10, correct.
That's a 10K,
Yeah.
and you can get a 9 out of it if you come back around and fly it right, or you fly it so poorly you get a 2. you're swapping a lot of points for just a 5-point penalty. It's smart to do. As you heard our chief judge call out, the competitor in the glider is off the toe and heading towards the box. The first maneuver would be a 30-degree downline. Downline to draw it. Trade that altitude for airspeed, build up your airspeed for the next maneuver, which is a clover leaf, which is in effect a loop with the quarter rolls that you're coming out on the y-axis. And you smoothly integrate it on the way up. Next maneuver will be a 270-degree competition turn, and we'll bring the glider back around, going from our right to the left. Next maneuver will be the slow roll. Nose pitches up. Getting the airspeed back for the wing over, a climbing, turning maneuver. Where you're at the apex, the wing should be vertical, and the pilot should be able to look right down the wing to the ground. And the second half should match the first. Gaining the airspeed to do the loop. And again, you pull hard first, and you ease up as you come over the top. As you come back around, you pull more to make the loop look nice and round. There's our wing wag, end of flight, nicely flown by our Air Force Academy cadet. And I believe the next competitor is also a primary glider pilot.
So Keith, when you're flying in one of these competitions, we all know that sometimes we have thermal lifts when you glide or fly. Do you ever feel that in the aerobatic box and have that change your dynamics, or?
I have felt it practicing, and turbulence you'll note because it'll bounce you around. But because we're moving through, and thermals tend to be a little bit tighter, and you'll go through them. And you gain a little bit of altitude, you're filling up, and then it settles back down. Okay, it's if you catch the edge of a thermal, and next thing you know, one wing gets pushed up over the other. Just
one more variable, right?
One more variable, one more thing to work through. The bigger issue for me is just flying the figures and flying them well. And as you heard the chief judge, our next competitor is Vivian. She's flying an MDM-1 Fox glider. And she's been training with the folks down at Arizona Soaring near Maricopa, Arizona, where the glider national championships will be held in, I believe, March of next year. They separated out. Originally we had national championships with all powered, all glider categories, and it became problematic with, you had folks that were flying powered and also flying gliders, and to try to mix all the categories and the powered and so forth with glider, it was more difficult. So the decision was tried to separate out the advanced, unlimited, and some of the other glider categories, and have a separate championship at a place where it's just strictly gliders. And it seems to work, because typically they'll get 35 glider pilots all converging on Arizona to fly. and I'm one of them. You're able to rent the glider down there, Fox Glider, and have somebody fly as a safety pilot, and I can compete primary or sportsman. So it's a great opportunity, and for folks who want to see what the glider competition is like, and come out to Salina and watch the primary sportsman intermediate, or wait till March. But it's flying gliders is as challenging, I found, as flying the power. It's just different. And Vivian is heading towards the box.
Big flag.
30-degree downline, first maneuver. Into the cloverleaf, which is that loop with the quarter roll. Bring her out on the y-axis when she comes around on the bottom looping portion of the maneuver. She'll do a 270-degree competition turn. Full roll. Gaining some speed for the wing over. And again, that's a climbing, turning maneuver where you're moving all the controls, and at the apex, again, you want to have that wing perfectly vertical and looking down at the ground. Come back around and setting up for the loop. One of the things that I will say for gliders, it may be quiet on the ground, but in the glider, when you're going fast, you know it because you can hear that whistling sound. So you don't need to look at the airspeed. You just listen and you know whether you're going fast or slow, which is helpful.
Yeah, even sitting here, we can hear them going by and the aircraft whistling through the air, so you can imagine what it sounds like to be in the cockpit and experience that.
When I flew with Jason Stevens, who is multiple U.S. glider national champion, he just has to listen to the glider. He knows what the speed is.
Yeah. Well, that was our last competitor. Again, if you joined us, we're live streaming from Salina, Kansas for the 2023 U.S. National Aerobatic Championships. And we just completed the Sportsman and Primary Power, and along with the Glider Free program. And we're going to take a short break now and reposition. The sun is moving across the field. Reposition on the other side. And starting at 12 o'clock, we're going to have the Unlimited Free Unknown 1 program. Again, 9 unlimited